Eric Johnson hooked me up with free tickets for his concert in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I'm going to tell you all about the concert and the experience. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to tell you about my experience going to see Eric Johnson in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Just a few days ago, he played Chattanooga, Tennessee on September 28th of 2025. And I'm out of Nashville, Tennessee, as many of you know that watch the channel. And I'm going to give you an honest, unfiltered opinion of the concert, give you a full review, and also talk about the experience, because it was kind of wild, kind of crazy how it all unfolded. So first and foremost, I've been an Eric Johnson fan since Via Musicom. I never really listened to the album Tones before, but after I bought Via Musicom and fell in love with Cliffs of Dover and all that stuff, I grew to really love Zap and that album in general. But I think Via Musicom is really a better, more polished record, but that's beside the point. I'm getting off subject. But I've been an Eric Johnson fan for a long, long time. Absolutely love the album Venus Isle, even though Venus Isle sort of didn't have the response or the recognition that Via Musicom received, because it didn't have a big song like Cliffs of Dover. Many of you know Manhattan and Camel's Night Out and stuff like that. But Venus Isle to me is sonic perfection. Up Close is a great album. In Bloom. Eric has quite a catalog out there. Some of it I feel is a little miss, but a lot of it is hit. You just kind of have to find what really suits you musically and what you like the best out of his catalog, I guess. It's kind of a roller coaster. But anyway, the concert was in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and out of Nashville, Tennessee, I was initially going to go buy tickets for the Chattanooga concert, which was the day before the Atlanta show. And I decided not to buy Chattanooga tickets because I was going to see Eric on the Texaphonic tour in Franklin, Tennessee. Because it was going to be closer, right? But strangely enough, the Texaphonic tour in Franklin is quite a bit more expensive than the tickets in Chattanooga. It's kind of weird how venues price stuff. But anyways, I was looking on Facebook. I'm never on Facebook. I hate Facebook, but I was scrolling through it. I have it for Messenger and stuff like that. But I was taking lunch on Saturday, the day before the show, on the 27th. I was practicing here in the studio, and I took some lunch, and I was eating my sandwich or whatever, and I was scrolling through Facebook and saw that Eric Johnson had just posted a video message or a post on Facebook, because I follow him online, and he said, if you put your zip code in the comments below, I'm giving away free tickets to the concert. So my first thought was, this is a scam. This is some kind of, scam thing that's going to be, like try to hack me or whatever. And I realized, this is really Eric's account. It looks legit. It seemed kind of weird. So I was like, I'm not going to do it. It's too good to be true. Anything that's too good to be true normally is, right? Or there's a catch. And I took a bite of my sandwich, took a little drink of my water, and I'm sitting there, and I went back and looked at it a couple more times, and I was like, what the heck? I put my zip code in there, and I was like one of the first people to comment on it. It wasn't going crazy in the comments. Eric Johnson's not like, Satriani or someone that would get tons of comments if he did that. And I look back in a couple minutes, and Eric Johnson looks like Eric personally replied to me. It might have been someone that manages his social media, but it had his little check mark, and he said, hey, you're a couple hours away from Chattanooga. Are you sure you want to take that long drive? And I was like, yes. He said, no problem. So he said, just bring your ID and show up at will call. So I thought, all right, that was easy enough. And then I told my son, Devin, he's a fan of Eric Johnson because he was raised around that stuff because of me, right? So we're always jamming on Cliffs of Dover. I've been practicing it for years and years and years, through the jam tracks, and he's familiar with all this stuff. So I call him on the phone. I said, hey, go on Eric Johnson's Facebook page right now and do the zip code comment thing. And he got a ticket. So I got to enjoy the show and see Eric with my son, which is really like bucket list stuff for me, because a year and a half ago, I took him to see Satriani at the Ryman, and I want to get a chance to take him to see Steve Vai, maybe Vai and Satriani. And we saw Eric Johnson together, and Eric is wonderful. You know, he's a great guy, great player, and my son's a musician, so it was really educational and inspirational as a budding guitarist to see someone like that, and for us to share that father and son. So thank you, Eric Johnson, for the free tickets. So here's what happened. So Chattanooga's a couple hours away. Getting out of Nashville is always extremely crazy. Chattanooga is on Eastern time zone, Central time zone here in Nashville. So the show was at 7:30. It was at the Walker Theater. Don't even know about the Walker Theater, never saw it. I've been to Chattanooga several times, played a lot of gigs in Chattanooga, but I'm not that familiar with the city. So it was at the Walker Theater. We left Nashville about 3 o'clock, which was 4 Chattanooga time. So I'm like, if we have traffic, any problems, we get there, we'll be there ahead of time. All right. So anyways, we saw a 5-car pileup on the other side of the interstate, south of Nashville. Bunch of cars just totaled on the interstate. Traffic backed up for a couple miles. Typical Sunday afternoon in Nashville. Fortunately, I hope they're okay. I hope everybody was fine, but we didn't have any issues on the southbound journey. But we left early enough just in case. And going through to Chattanooga is pretty interesting. You got to go up Mount Eagle, up over the mountain and then down the mountain. And it's very scenic. It's beautiful, and you see a lot of cool stuff. Very simple trip, 2 hours. So we get to Chattanooga, and I paid for parking. I parked like 2 blocks away from Walker Theater. I knew it was down the street based on my GPS. There wasn't a whole lot going on in Chattanooga. Traffic's always busy getting into Chattanooga because it's very mountainous, and 75 and 24 interstates merge after Chattanooga, and always causes lots of traffic issues. But it was a little stop and go going into Chattanooga. For some reason, by the river, it's always slows down for no reason. I don't know if people think they're going to drive in the river and fall off into the water and everybody slows down to like a snail's pace, but it's been that way for decades. And at least 20 years that I remember. So anyway, we pull up to Walker Theater, close to it, and I paid $8 to park in this trashy looking parking lot. And there's a trailer with a computer that you pay for your parking. And who knows, parking's probably free on Sunday in Chattanooga, and I wasted $8, but I'm not going to risk getting my car towed or get some kind of ticket, right? So I paid the $8 and parked, and we pulled up to, we walked up to Walker Theater, and Eric's got this gorgeous tour bus, beautiful tour bus, and a trailer parked right in front of Walker Theater, like right on the road. And Walker Theater kind of looks like a government building. It looks like it should be, a place where, legislature, or whatever, people meet in Congress. It looked very old school, very old. And, I don't know what other events go on in Walker Theater, but essentially it looked like a church on the inside. It looked like an old, very old Art Deco-ish type of building, old looking carpet. It wasn't nasty or grubby, but it was old, and you could tell it'd been there forever. And so I thought, here's the moment of truth. Is this free ticket thing going to work out? And go up to will call, and there was only about maybe 20 people standing in the lobby area wanting to get seated. And we were there. I got there, maybe an hour before the show started, 45 minutes, and there weren't that many people, trying to get in where they were taking tickets. And I went up to Will Call and gave him my name, and she handed me, no questions asked, man, tickets, boom, right there. They were right there. But the lady behind the counter, she seemed kind of upset. She's like, what was this through? What kind of event did you get these tickets? Like, she was questioning like Eric, or what was the validity, because there's probably quite a few people that won. I think I looked in the comments on Facebook, and there was like maybe 10 or 12 people that got a couple tickets for free. So they probably had an influx of people getting tickets for free. And she asked me, and I said, well, it was through Facebook. Eric Johnson gave these tickets away. Eric did himself, the artist playing tonight. And it just kind of blew her mind, like, well, what? She goes, so it was a Facebook thing? And I was like, no, it wasn't a Facebook contest. Eric Johnson did a thing on his own to give these tickets away, put me on the list. And she said, well, okay. And she gave me the ticket. You know, it wasn't like she was going to refuse it, but it was like she didn't want to give away free tickets. Like they were mad that he was giving away tickets. And I'm sure every artist gets a comp list, like a, you know, a guest list, right? And Eric, I'm sure, doesn't know anybody in Chattanooga. And playing the night before in Atlanta, this show turned out to be, there wasn't a lot of people there, which I'm about to get to. I forgot to mention, as we're walking into the Walker Theater, there was a girl holding a Stratocaster out of a case. It was like a silver Strat. It looked like a, you know, Mexican Fender Strat. Might have been an American. And she was walking around. I don't know if she had VIP seats earlier, but I didn't see an autograph on the guitar. And this girl was wearing like a just above her knee leather, like a leather skirt, and she was wearing these cowboy-looking boots. And she had on a top that was sleeveless. And it was like a lot of cleavage. And she had curly hair and glasses. She looked to be about 30, maybe 28, 29. And it looked like she was from Texas going to a Judas Priest concert. It was kind of weird. It was like she was dressed up and ready to kill. Like, you know, I don't want to say anything to get me in trouble. I mean, she was a pretty woman, but she was totally not dressed appropriately for like an Eric Johnson concert. I mean, dude's 71 and he's like a super chill guy, and she was bringing this guitar, and maybe she had VIP seats and she just wanted to look really nice. She didn't look like, you know, trashy or nothing, but she looked like she should be going to a metal concert in Texas back in the 80s or something. It was interesting. Should have got a picture, but I didn't. And by the way, throughout this video, I'm gonna randomly put some clips of the video of the concert in this throughout this review. Okay, so if it all of a sudden stops and goes to some concert footage, I've got a few seconds here and there of concert footage. So there you go. So we get in, and you know, there's very few people milling around. And right when I walked through the door in the front, there was a table set up, a long table with merch, and they had T-shirts for $35, and they had autographed posters for $25. They had beanies for $20, guitar straps. I don't know how much the guitar straps were. They weren't on the sheet of paper listed as a price, but they were probably like $20, $30 for a strap, I'm thinking. Maybe more. They were nice straps. Picks were $10. They had CDs and they had signed vinyl albums. The signed vinyl was like $70. It was kind of pricey, but I bought an autographed 13 by 19 photograph, a poster, and I wound up putting it in a frame, and I put my concert ticket. And I've got it right over here. I'll show it to you. Give me just a second. I'll grab it. Okay, I had to get the poster, so hopefully it's not going to glare too much, but I'll get some close-up shots of this. Looks like there's a little bit of a glare, but these are really nice. This is like cardstock poster paper. It's a really nice image of Eric playing the Strat, and he's autographed it. It's a real autograph down here, and the concert ticket. Now, ticket prices for this, according to this stub, say $39.50, and we were on the floor about maybe 10, well, probably about 15 rows back on the floor. So $39.50, and I know I checked Franklin tickets, and I want to say they were like $65. So on Vivid seats, I checked the ticket prices on Vivid before the show just to check, and they were like $54.50 through resellers for Chattanooga. So this wound up, since it was free, it was obviously the best deal, but this concert, for whatever reason, was more expensive pricing than the Atlanta and the Franklin show. So anyways, the merch table had one lady behind the merch table, and she was really pleasant. She was she looked like she could have been your mom, and all it needed was one person selling merch, because there was about 10 of us in line to get merch, and I bought this poster, and you know, people were buying posters and mostly shirts and hats, you know, ball caps and stuff. And I had to support Eric because I got a free ticket. I should have bought more merch, but merch is expensive, and I really wanted this poster, and this called out to me. I really wasn't into getting another t-shirt or guitar strap, guitar picks, that sort of thing. So got through the merch, got a drink, and then couldn't figure out where to go. We're walking around this place, and it's carpeted, and there's stairs that go up to different levels, and there's different hallways. I mean, this is a big, 2-3 story building, and I had to ask. I'd ask somebody. I'm like, "Oh, do we go this way?" And it was one of the concert goers, and he said, "I don't know. I figured you knew where you were going, so I was going to follow you." And we had a good laugh about it. So we went up some stairs, and there was a lady that worked there, and I said, "Hey, where do we go to the concert?" She goes, "Oh, it's up these stairs. Go up this way, and then you'll go down this thing." So thankfully we asked, because no one there was really, not that they were unhelpful, but they were just kind of standing around. There weren't a whole lot of people. It felt like we were going to church or going to a wedding or something. It was really interesting, kind of a mild evening. So we get to the entrance to the theater, and thankfully the person that was opening the doors, the valet, they showed me the seat where I got to sit. They brought me down this aisle, and I was in I don't know, row N or row G, I can't remember, it's on my ticket. And I was sitting right on the edge of the seat, and they were pews. These were cushioned pews, long pews. So that ought to tell you the age of this place. There was no obstructed view, and the first thing I noticed was an upright bass laying on the floor of the stage, an upright bass on its side, literally sitting there, and a stool, and a drum set on a riser. Didn't see any amps. I saw some electric basses kind of in a little multi-stand thing, and I was like, well, there's going to be some acoustic stuff tonight, which I'm not really there to see acoustic stuff, but I'm like, hey, it's cool, trying to keep a positive attitude, got a free ticket. It was a nice trip down here. This is kind of a vibey venue, and I'm not exaggerating. There was probably only about 300 to 400 people at this concert. It was really small attendance. And that's not a dig on Eric, but a lot of people don't go to these kind of shows anymore. And part of my point of this video is to say, you got to go out and see these guys while you still can. They're not getting any younger. Eric, I believe, is 71. And this stuff is only going to be around for so long. And even if you got to pay a minimal price for a ticket, it's well worth it. So anyways, the show gets underway, kind of really just chill, no music, nothing. There's like really not much going on, and they walk out, and the bass player Roscoe Beck, who's played with him since Austin City Limits, I think the Electromagnets, he was playing with them even, but Roscoe came out and had the upright, and Eric came out with looked like a Martin acoustic, and the drummer walked up on stage, and they played some acoustic songs. Now on my phone I've got a set list, and I'll tell you the acoustic set, it actually kind of blew me away. When you're not really expecting much and you're not really looking forward to something and it turns out being awesome, it's really a pleasant surprise. And I kind of felt guilty for kind of like not really looking forward to seeing the acoustic set. And I actually wouldn't have minded if it was a little bit longer. But he started off with Resolution. He then played Abelia. Then he did April Come She Will. It's a Paul Simon song. He introduced it as a Simon and Garfunkel song, but I guess it's a Paul Simon song. Then he played Water Wheel, which is one of his kind of newer songs, been out about 5 years. It's really mellow stuff. and they did a tribute to Chet Atkins, and that wrapped up his acoustic set. So it was cool when he played the Chet Atkins song. He mentioned, he goes, "Hey, I had the pleasure of playing on a Chet Atkins record several years ago, many years ago, and Chet was going to give me a check, and he told me when the session was over, Eric, I'm going to have a check mailed out to you and pay you for doing this." And Eric told the audience that he told Chet, "Man, playing on your record was payment enough. You don't got to pay me anything. Just playing with you was payment enough." And then Eric Johnson said to us in the audience, he said that a few weeks went by and he got a guitar in the mail, and Chet Atkins had mailed him one of his personal guitars, and he said he still has it, and that was amazing. And then he played this acoustic song, tribute to Chet. Let me just say, Eric Johnson obviously is a great player. He is really a phenomenal acoustic player. He played some extremely tasteful acoustic parts. His roadie, his tech, brought a different acoustic out for each song, whether he wanted a different tone or maybe they were tuned differently. And Eric's voice sounded good. Eric sings very quietly, and he sang very well at this concert. Sometimes it's hard to hear him because he'll be playing and he'll be away from the microphone when he's playing his electric stuff. So if you're not familiar with the song, it can be kind of hard to make out what he's saying. But if you know the song, you know it from heart, like Desert Rose, which he played later on in the show, which I'm getting to. So the acoustic stuff was great. One thing that was cool about this show is I've seen Eric a couple times live. I saw him at a Live at 5 event for free, ironically, about 20 years ago in Chattanooga, just on a whim. It just happened to be a day I was in Chattanooga playing a gig, and Eric was doing a Live at 5 right down the sidewalk, which was unique. But I saw him at 328 Performance Hall for the Venus Isle Tour in Nashville in the 90s. And Eric never really has a lot to say. He's normally he almost seems kind of timid, kind of quiet, sort of shy, and he doesn't talk loud into the mic, so sometimes you don't really even understand what he says between songs. At least that's my experience with him and listening to live recordings. And he was funny. He was joking around with the audience, and he was telling stories. At one point in the show, he went to the wrong song on the set list. He went to and the drummer said to him, I mean, you could literally hear these people talking to each other between songs because the audience were 50 plus, okay, except for the girl in the beginning I told you about. But probably 50 plus, a lot of gray hair in the audience, and mostly guys and some women who were coerced into going to the show by their husbands. So you could hear them talking between songs, and the drummer said, "Oh, are we skipping that song? We're going to the next one." And Eric was like, "Oh, actually, we aren't going to play that song right now. We've got a different song, so we'll do that one next." So it was funny, and people would laugh, and sometimes it was so quiet. People would applaud. They were very courteous. People were not standing, although Eric received 3 standing ovations that night for 3 things, maybe 2. One after Cliffs of Dover, and then one at the very end after he played Zap in the encore. 2 standing ovations, which I thought was really nice. But everybody was really well behaved, well mannered. They sat in their pew, and we were basically at church, but it was the church of Eric Johnson. So Eric played these acoustic songs, forgot one of the songs on the set list, came back, joked around with his band, and sometimes we'd get really quiet between songs, and Eric would be like, how's everybody doing out there? And people would go, yeah, all right, you know. He's like, we take requests. And somebody yelled out a song, and I don't think Eric heard him. He was sort of like, what, you know? And they talked a little bit in the front row. And there's one point where he's playing his Strat, and somebody asked him, is that Virginia, the Strat, your Strat Virginia? And Eric was like, no, I don't own that guitar anymore. I sold it a long time ago. And he sounded kind of sad, you know. I forgot the story around him selling Virginia. But, you know, you could literally just like yell out stuff and talk to him. But people were pretty respectful, you know. I shouldn't say pretty respectful. Everybody was very calm and respectful. It was a pleasant evening. So he started off his electric set. He went through a multitude of songs, a lot of stuff I had never even heard. I know probably some of these songs were off of he recently released an album where he released a bunch of older stuff that he revamped and mixed, and a lot of recordings, and I just haven't really got into that. So I confess, I just haven't really touched on the new stuff. I kind of stopped listening to the new Eric Johnson stuff after Up Close, which Up Close is a great album, and also there's a live album out there that was released after that I listened to quite a bit. But we went through Once Upon a Time in Texas, Rejoice, Little Bit of Love, You Got Things Going On, played Mr. Silvertone. I was familiar with that. Bird That Whistles, I'd never heard of that song, but that was a fun track. True Heart Blues was on the set list. After that, he did Light of Day, Hey Mama. Now these songs, you know, I just wasn't really familiar with them, but I enjoyed all of them. Eric played probably the first 6 or 7 songs on a red SG. He didn't have a maestro on it, but he had the maestro, this bridge piece. It was his famous red SG that you see. It's probably a 61 or a 64, somewhere in that range. His Marshall Plexi, I could see it in the corner. As you're looking at the stage, I could see off in the corner of the stage, which looked very much like if you were in a high school. I'm sure there was a curtain. So when they do plays there, they open the curtain, but the curtain was open. And it looked just like a stage for plays. You could see his Marshall kind of forgotten and sad in the far corner of the stage, probably so he could turn it up real loud and not blast everybody or himself out of the water. He wasn't wearing headphones, so maybe it was to help him with his tinnitus. But you could see the old Marshall, and he had his fenders going, but you couldn't see his fenders. They were so, you know, Fender combos are small, so everything was way in the back behind like stands and cases and stuff like that. You know, he really didn't have an elaborate stage setup whatsoever. It was a drum set on a riser that was maybe 2.5 feet tall, and you know, Roscoe playing his bass through, you know, a tall cabinet and a head. He had a Fender, looked like a Fender Bassman head, but it might have been something different. But he was playing through Fender amps or a Fender amp, and it looks like he had a bottom that had 2 or 4 12s and maybe 4 15s, or it might have been 8 15s. It was a tall Fender cabinet. So I digress. So he played his SG for like maybe the first 6, 7 songs. Then he switched over to his Telecaster. I've never seen Eric play a Telecaster live, and that was interesting. So Eric played his Telecaster, and he did some really impressive stuff. One notable thing after he did Stella by Starlight, really jazzy song, and then he did Impressions by John Coltrane. And let me just tell you, Eric played all the Stella by Starlight and this Coltrane song. He played it with a clean tone. And this Coltrane song, he didn't have any delay or anything on his Telecaster. And it was furious. I mean, he did all kinds of improv and melodic stuff, and I've never heard Eric play clean or that intensely in a jazz setting. And for just a three-piece band, these guys were killing it. Truly, truly impressive playing on the Coltrane. The whole night he played impressively. Eric still has it. He's not, you know, as we get older, our tastes change, our styles change. He's not quite the Eric Johnson you see on Austin City Limits, but it's damn close, man. So when he finished doing the John Coltrane song, he switched over to his Strat. He played Steve's Boogie. That was cool to hear live, which was spot on perfect. He played Righteous, and then Repose. All About You was the only track he played off Venus Isle, and that was disappointing to me. Venus Isle being one of my favorite albums. I wish he would have played. Manhattan, and I wish he would have played Pavilion. That would have been nice, or maybe When the Sun Meets the Sky. I love When the Sun Meets the Sky. That's such a great track. But All About You, that's one of the tracks I don't really care for off of Venus Isle. The verses go on forever. It's a very heavy vocal song, and Eric seemed to struggle just a little bit playing it and singing it. There's a really difficult riff that travels throughout the song, and I respect him for doing it. It's just I don't know, man. I think putting a different track off Venus Isle and maybe some more tracks off IV and Music Hum might be a good idea. After All About You, he played Desert Rose. That sounded excellent. Even the flanger, all the stuff going on in that song was killer. And then Cliffs of Dover, he did this long droning, delay thing, like a looper thing, of course, that he always does in front of Cliffs of Dover. And then he played Cliffs of Dover and got a standing ovation. Cliffs of Dover sounded great. It's always impressive to hear Eric switch between his fuzz pedals and his clean Fender amps. So he's doing a lot of dancing up there. He'll be singing, and then he'll hit his fuzz, and he'll walk over to Roscoe and the drummer, forget the drummer's name, apologize, and they'll all just get together and jam. It's a three-piece. It's like going to see Hendrix or something live back in the day, right? And they just play, man. They face each other and they just go for it, which is a lot of fun. So Cliffs of Dover kind of had that feel to it. He got a standing ovation, and he left the stage, and we all clapped and went nuts. Everybody stood up and clapped and was yelling Eric, and they came out within like 1 minute, 1.5 minutes, and they played Love or Confusion, which is a Hendrix song. So it was off Jimi Hendrix Experience, and then he did Zap as his closer. I thought Cliffs of Dover would be the closer. I like that better than Zap, but hearing Zap live was awesome, and that is really a fiery song, shows a lot of youthful energy, and for a moment there I felt like I was watching Eric Johnson on Austin City Limits. So it was a lot of fun, and they were very gracious, and getting out of the Walker Theater was a piece of cake, man. I mean, it wasn't like your typical concert venue where you gotta walk out like you're in a herd of cattle and force yourself out the door and get to your car and spend forever getting out of the city. And, so getting home was uneventful. And it was a great time, it was really relaxing, a great night of music. Here's my opinion of the show. And, brutally honest, I don't really have a lot of negative to say about it. I'll start with my critiques, and then I'll tell you the positive. My critique is some of the stuff was really obscure. And at Eric's age, I think it would have been, as a fan, it would have been nice to hear more off of Avia Musicom and Venus Isle, and maybe a couple tracks off of Up Close. He's got a lot of really good songs. I get he's trying to promote some of his newer things, but I mean, records don't sell anymore, CDs don't sell anymore, and that's very sad. So artists like that live off of their legacy. And I get it, it's an Eric Johnson concert. We're there to see him jam and blow it out as a three-piece band, and it was excellent. But it really would have been nice to hear some of the more familiar tunes. I think starting off acoustic was very mellow, and it was a good transition into the show. But I think it would have been nicer to have, maybe play a couple acoustic songs throughout the show. Have the show start really hot, and then come down to a vocal song, and then do an acoustic or two, and then bring it back up, and then have some valleys of acoustic. That'd have been cool. And maybe come out on the encore and play tribute to Chet, and then play a Hendrix song, and then end it with Zap. Again, just my critique and my opinion. But that's really it. I felt like it was a, overall positive stuff. It's pretty much, I got all positives to say about it. The venue was vibey. It was old school, and the sound in there was good. Eric's tone was killer. His playing was very, very solid, very good. His fuzz pedals sounded excellent. His Marshalls, his Fenders, typical Eric Johnson. It bloomed very well. I thought it was fun to see him play several different instruments. It was cool that Eric, another positive, that he interacted with the audience the way that he did. It's almost like he let his guard down, and he was more comfortable in that setting. It's almost like, I feel like, because we were a small crowd, I felt like Eric, that's his element. Like, it's almost like a large bar crowd is what that felt like. It was larger than that, but not much. And I feel that maybe that allowed him to open up more. I just haven't seen enough Eric Johnson concerts to know if that's normal or not. In my experience, it's not. But it's very cool that he interacted with us the way that he did. And it was nice to see him play an SG, a Telecaster, his Strat, and also the really cool acoustic guitars that he had. I really enjoyed the fact that it was just a three-piece band. There were no amp models. There was no screen behind the drums. There were no backing tracks. This is as raw as it could get. And for three guys, these dudes put out some beautiful music, true musicianship, and it was really inspiring. And being able to get to share that with my son and get him, he's 22, and he's very impressionable, and he's a great musician, but being able to share that and have him and look over and see him filming stuff, and then he goes home, and the next couple of days he's just playing his Strat and just coming up with some riffs that I've never heard him play before. And I remember that happening to me, being so inspired after seeing Stevie Ray Vaughan live in 1985. That I did the same thing, and I see myself in my son. And as a parent, that's one of the best rewards. I see myself in both of my sons, but that night was my youngest son's night for me to see that, and I'll always cherish that. That's a beautiful experience. And the last thing I'll say is I got to meet a YouTube member or a YouTube subscriber. I met Chris. His name's Chris Goforth. After I got seated in the Walker Theater, a guy came up to me, and it was the guy that initially I asked a person early on before the show started, which way do we get to the stage? And that guy said, I don't know. I was hoping I'd follow you. And so him and his buddy followed me down to the theater. And when I sat down, he came up to me. He's like, hey, are you Marty? And I said, yeah, I am. He goes, man, my name's Chris. I love your channel, and it's a pleasure to meet you. And so it's always cool to meet subscribers out in the wild. You know, I'm just a small YouTube channel, but it's really nice to know that, you know, my channel's made an impact, and there's people that know me that I've never met before. And I just happen to have one of my Marty 5150 picks in my pocket because I carry him with me and because I find the guitar that I want to play, and I gave him a pick. So Chris, it was really great to meet you. And he messaged me the next day and said, man, next time you're in Chattanooga, let's grab a cup of coffee. And I totally will do that, man, if I'm down in Chattanooga. So, or any of you subscribers, if you're in town and we meet up, you know, let's have a drink. So that's my honest review of the Eric Johnson Texaphonic tour in the Walker Theater in Chattanooga. I hope that you like this video. By the way, I did this video, I was inspired by a great YouTube channel that I watch called Art of Guitar. If you're not familiar with Art of Guitar, watch his channel. Great guy, man, and he does a lot of concert reviews, and so I enjoy those videos, so I thought you all might enjoy it, and if I did one like that, especially surrounding the awesome Eric Johnson. And it was a pleasure to see him. Thank you, Eric. I know you probably will never see this or watch it, but if you do, that was a great show. Thank you for the tickets. Thank you for your generosity. And most importantly, thank you for many decades of awesome music, for inspiring me as a player and also inspiring my son, who is 22 and playing guitar. That is priceless. If you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing, comment below, and as always, have a great day. Peace out.